Hey guys, so this is part 2. If you haven't watched part 1, go to my channel down below and it should be there. So let me just get right into it. So anyway, before I finish with this story, I just wanted to say, earlier I had a friend who I kind of had a situation similar to what this situation was. And, she asked me if she can, invite a guy over to my house because, everyone's going to be at her house and no one's at my house. And so I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And when she invited this guy, the guy ended up liking me more than she did. And so it kind of was awkward or whatever. And it didn't really go much anywhere. But I kind of felt awkward in that situation. So I was kind of reluctant after that. So fast forward back to this thing. My friend Binta, she, had this guy, Frankie. And one day she texted me and she was like, hey, my friend Frankie, he came over to hang out with me, but I'm busy with this other guy right now. Could you keep him company until I get home? I'm running a little late. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And so I went. She gave me his number. I texted him. I said, hey, Frankie, this is Binta's friend. She told me to keep you company. Where are you? So I can, keep you company or whatever. And he told me where he was. He was like, yeah, I'm in this black car. I'm parked right here. And I'm like, sure. I went into the car. We started talking. He was pretty cool. He was pretty nice. We talked about school. We talked about, lots of things or whatever. So, anyway, after that, Binta came over. After we talked for a while, Binta came and she was like, oh, thanks, Vanessa, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, I can go now. And Frankie was like, no, you should stay. And I'm like, no, I'm okay. And he's like, no, I'm going to buy Binta some dinner and stuff. I'll buy you some dinner too. Thanks for keeping me company or whatever. So he bought me dinner. We went to the Chinese food place because that's what Binta wanted. So I just got something from there. And I was just like, thank you, and I'm gonna leave. And he was like, oh, thanks again or whatever. So a couple weeks passed by and I didn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden Frankie texts me and was like, hey, Vanessa, have you heard from Binta? And I'm like, no, I haven't heard from her. And he's like, oh, I was supposed to see her today and I haven't been hearing her. She's not calling me or whatever. Do you mind keeping me company again and stuff, since I'm not sitting so I don't have to sit out here by myself? I said, well, honestly, I'm not I'm not home right now, even though I was, but I wasn't comfortable. I didn't want to do that. So because I couldn't get a hold of Binta either, and I didn't want her to think that I'm trying to steal her guy or whatever dumb shit. So I was just like, oh, I'm not home right now, but I'll try to get in contact with Binta. So I finally got, he was like, okay, that's fine. So I finally got in contact with Binta, and she was like, oh yeah, I'm running late again. Do you mind keeping him company again? I'm like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah, just keep him company. I was like, okay, whatever. So I texted him and I said, oh, are you still outside? And he's like, yeah, I'm outside. And he goes and he's like, well, I'm right here or whatever. And I'm like, well, I can keep you company. I'm home now, so I can keep you company or whatever. So I went to his car, we talked again, blah, 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 blah. Same thing. Then a couple, maybe a week passed by, and all of a sudden I get a call from Binta. So Binta was like, oh, you want to hang out with Frankie and I? And I'm like, not really. And then she's like, oh, come on, he's been asking about you or whatever. And so I'm just like, okay, I guess why not? So when I went there, Binta was drunk and stuff like that, and Frankie was getting kind of like, you know, like the first time when Binta came and, you know, I was just like, it's awkward. They were kissing, they were touching all over each other and things like that. And it was like, okay, like third wheel. So this time I'm like, oh God, like she's going to be all over him. She was all over him. And then Frankie said something about, oh, it would be so nice to have both of you in my bed and things like that. And started like kind of like a little like touching my leg or whatever. Like I was in the back seat and they were in the front, so like he was kind of touching my leg, and she was like, oh yeah, that would be so great. And she was like kind of touching me too and all of this stuff. And she's like, oh, but I think Vanessa's like awkward. And he's like, oh no, Vanessa's not awkward, like, right, Vanessa? I'm like, yeah, like I don't want to do this, like can I leave now? And they started laughing and stuff, and so I left, right? And that was like kind of like a awkward situation, but it was whatever. So anyway, fast forward for like another week or whatever, I get another text from Frankie, and he's like, hey, and I'm like, oh, hey, I haven't heard from Brenda all day. And he's like, oh no, well, I'm not supposed to see Binta, you know, for a while, but I came to talk to you because I wanted to apologize for the other day. You know, we were a little too drunk or whatever. And he's like, I'm outside. Do you want to just come outside so I can apologize? So I said, I don't know. And then he was like, no, seriously, I just want to apologize and stuff. And I was like, sorry. I was like, okay. So I went outside and what happened? I went into his car. He was like, I really apologize. You know, I didn't really mean to make you feel awkward or anything like that. You know, I just get, you know, kind of flustered when I'm a little tipsy or whatever when I'm around pretty girls. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. Like, I'm like that. And he's like, you know, you're so pretty, you're beautiful, like I really like you, and you know, we have great conversations and things like that, like. And I'm like, but you're with Binta. And he's like, not really, like I feel like she's stringing me along, like she only wants me when I offer to buy her dinner. We don't have conversations and things like that. And like, I really like our conversation that we have. And I'm like, oh well, you know, I'm not looking to do that, you know, whatever. And he's like, oh no, you know, I understand, but you know, I just wanted to kind of have that connection with somebody. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's great. And anyway, and then he was like, oh, anyway, you know, Binta should be coming soon, so I guess I'll talk to you later. And I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you later. So after that, he started texting and we started talking a lot, and you know, we started laughing and things like that. And he made me feel happy, like I haven't felt in a while since I've broken up with Brian. And one day he came and he was like, hey Vanessa, I'm outside, you want to come outside so we can have a chat? I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I started talking to him. And I was like, oh, you're seeing Binta today? And he's like, oh, no, I'm not seeing Binta today. I really just came to have a conversation with you. So I'm like, okay, that's sweet. That's nice. But that was pretty much it. They didn't really go anything further from that. And we just, you know, just started talking a little bit more. So anyway, one day, Binta calls me and says, oh, Vanessa, Frankie's outside. And I totally forgot. I just went and I'm hanging out with somebody else. And I forgot that I was supposed to hang out with Frankie. And I know that, you know Frankie, could you just like hang out with him today? you know, because he came all this way or whatever. And I'm like, are you sure? And I'm like, she's like, yeah, just hang out with him, you know, he says he really likes having conversation with you, so, you know, you could just hang out with him or whatever. I'm already seeing this. I'm with this other guy. And I'm like, okay. So I went to Frankie's car, and he was like, oh, Vanessa, where's Binta? And I'm like, oh, Binta's not coming. She got pulled away for something else. And he was like, oh, you know, well, I was, you know, really looking forward to having a thing, and I hate that she does this all the time, and I feel like that she's just using me for money and material things or whatever. And I'm like, oh, you know, that sucks or whatever. And one thing led to another, and I will tell you that in part 3, because I just saw what time it is. So, peace, guys.